Hi everybody, here we are back in my workshop again on a not so live video this time. I'm just taking a couple of days off just for some R&R, so I thought I'd give you a weekend project really. So we're going to use a couple of bits of laburnum, that lovely timber, and we'll do a vase and a toadstool. Good tool skills in this one. Let me show you the timber. So laburnum is pretty much a garden tree, really lovely yellow flowers. Quite a toxic timber, so we've got to be fairly careful what we use it for in terms of food things. If you're going to use it for food sources, then obviously sealing the timber is very important. But here, this is just a couple of crafty projects really. So a vase and a little toadstool, just a decoration. So a lovely green centre with that lovely white sapwood going around the outside. It's just a log section. And if you're going to be drying this sort of stuff, we know what happens with timber. If you cut it short, it'll split quite quickly. What I tend to do for this sort of stuff is keep the limbs as long as possible, 5-6 foot even, and then let them dry naturally. You're always going to lose a little bit at each end, but then you can chop it up. Once it's dry, you chop it up and away you go without having any splits in the end. So that's the way we'll do it. So let's start, we'll start with a smaller project and we'll work our way up. So at the moment, center-wise, I've got a Pro Drive in here. Now we are going to use that one, but we're going to use that one for the vase later. So I'm going to swap that Pro Drive out and we're going to go with a ring center. I'm also going to have the tailstock center the same profile as well. So let's pop the vase away just for the moment and get out my drive center. So Charlie's behind the camera. We all know Charlie's still here for the moment, working with us. So I can't say ask questions, but post the questions and we'll get to them. Okay. So yeah, Charlie, what I want to do, look, is just have a look at the centers. So I'm going to remove this one. So if you want to come in a bit closer, let me take that one out. Now by now, I would have last week done the talk on centers, so you'll all know what a Pro Drive is. Okay, that's that one. I'm taking that one out. That one's going to be used in a moment on the vase. So I'm going to pop that on one side. But on this one, what we're going to do on this little vase, on this little toadstool, I want to be able to potentially turn the toadstool around halfway through the making process. So I'm using these two centers. And these are a matched pair of centers. They have the same profile, a live tailstock center here and a friction drive here. Okay, so those are the ones we're going to go with. And there. Now I can roughly center up. It's log section after all. This is not a precise piece of turning. Several years dry. I'm just going to roughly sight with the bradawl, and I'm going to start off, I'm going to choose this as the top because there's something happening there, something quite interesting. So we're going to have that as the top. Now don't worry, with a friction drive or safety center, you're never going to get as much grip as you would with a pronged drive or Pro Drive. So we're going to nurse it a little bit, but it'll be ample for what we want here. Now I will have some part of this natural edge, so I'm going to leave probably around about the center as a natural edge, so I don't want to just rough it down blindly. So we're going to start off with the bowl gouge and start shaping immediately. I'm going to have the dust extractor running from this. This is bone dry timber. I know from experience that it's fairly dusty as well, so we are having a little bit of noise, but you know what it's like. You can still hear me. I'll shout a bit louder. So there we are. Now speed on this one, I'm going to have this running fairly quickly, probably around about the 1600 revs mark, and we're going to do most of the shaping with a 10mm 3/8 bowl gouge. So I'm just going to need some direction. Okay, Charlie's giving me the thumbs up so you can see that one. So nice little 3/8 or 10mm bowl gouge. Okay, and one other thing we're going to use on this one is a round nose scraper. So there's no scraper snobbery in this workshop. We use round nose scrapers every now and again for certain applications where nothing else will go to. And at that point, we're going to flip the piece over as well. So nice quick project, this one. Like I say, nice little weekend or evening projects. So here goes. Let's start shaping. I'll start by shaping the top of the toadstool, and we're going to do this almost like a bell shape. To start with, I'm going to start quite close to this edge and start that little concave cut, and when we nearly get there, then we can reverse to the convex. So that's my first bit. Dust extractor's going on now. Okay, so I'm going to start the lathe at 0 and work the speed up. I've already checked to make sure nothing was touching the tool rest. So here we go, we're going to go up to about 1800. This is one of the projects that I start people off on a beginner's course. Once we've introduced them to the tools, we've done a practice piece, then one of the finished projects will be a nice small toadstool, something like this. So here we go, I'm going to have my flute facing to my 2 o'clock, and I'm going to start arcing the handle. So if that happens, we're just going to tighten up the tailstock, give it another go. Making a few roughing cuts at the moment. So you can see now that we're breaking through into that dark heartwood. A little bit of care when you get to the end, because you can explode. If I carry on pushing, this is what happens. You suddenly explode through the edge. So what you need to do is just take a little bit of time. And then when you get to that edge, either back off, make a lighter cut, or just tickle away a little bit at a time. Sends the chisel sliding on the bevel, and it also gives a really nice clean finish. What we're going to do now is I'll push that right to the edge, and I'm going to do one more of those, just cleaning these cuts now. So again, I'm just pushing up the length of the tool. I'm not pushing with my forward hand. If you push with your forward hand, you take the bevel off the timber. There we are, right to the edge. Now we can keep that bevel rubbing. Put the handle round the other way. One more of those cuts. I'm just going to stop and show you that before Charlie takes the camera away. You can see how clean that cut becomes when you're pushing up the length of that chisel. There. Right, Charlie, again, if you want to pop back to the other side now. So now, come a bit closer so more of an overhead. Or not. You can't say so. There we are, shut that foot in. That's brilliant. Fantastic. Alright. Okay, so what I want to do now, I'm going to take a nice deep cut with a parting tool. Then I can rough the bottom of the toadstool down. So it goes. So we're going to do a double cut. Come back slightly over to one side, take another cut directly the side of first. And what we're doing here is we've just given the chisel room. get to about, I would say, an inch or 25 mil. I'm going to stop the lathe, I'm going to check the natural edge, and actually I'd like that a bit smaller, so I'm going to take a further cut. A bit better, I think. I'm not worried if the bark is going to come off. That's fine. I'm not worried about that. I don't think it will, but if it does, that's fine. Okay, so now I've got to protect that bark, so I'm going to work away from the bark edge. We're going to come this way now. Again, with the bowl gouge. Roots facing me, so towards 10 o'clock. Just taking the bark off. And there's no bevel rubbing at this stage, I'm just roughing, using the bowl as a roughing gouge. There we are. Again, we'll stop, we'll have a look. There we are, you can see the sort of finish. So now I'm going to bevel rub. A nice little curve, and then again on here we want to just be careful, control the gouge, be careful not to hit that rim. I'm going to do a convex curve first. Convex curve over, merge it into your concave. There we are. So again, let's have a stop and a look, see what we've got. And the lovely thing about laburnum or yew, those sorts of timbers that have a different colour sap, is you've got that real contrast there, that real sort of ribbon running around the edge. Okay, so that leaves us our little gnarly bit in here. Now I'm a right-hander, so when it comes to trying to take that off with the scraper, I'm almost getting in my own way. So what I'm going to do is swap the piece around so we can get to that easier. Because we've got our match centres on here, that's not a problem. So let's flip him over. Literally into the same position. There we go. Now I'm free. As a right-hander, I can now come here nice and comfortably and just tickle round. When you're using a scraper, especially a standard scraper like this, handles high, and I'm flat on the tool rest. There is a inclination to want to do that, but keep it flat on the tool rest, otherwise you get a lot of chatter. There we are. Now it's your choice now, you can either leave it there to sand, or I tend to turn it back around to how it was. So back around. Always in the same position because we've got those nice marks. There we are. Let's take a little bit more off of that area there actually. And we'll finish that in a minute. We'll finish it off the lathe. So we'll finish it with a sanding disc. So I'm going to sand that up now. And we're going to sand with my usual mix of abrasives, so 100, 150, 240, then a 400, and then on this one we're going to use some friction polish. I've got my chestnut friction polish. Get some abrasive, so 100. 240 and 400. Dust extractor's already on, so we don't have to worry about that. Be careful of your fingers, you have got a natural edge. So that's the 100, so now we can move on. We can move on a bit quicker now. Now we've done the hard work with the 100 grit. That's the final grade. There, so let's stop and have a look, see what we have. A lovely laburnum. So what we'll do now, we'll darken that up a little bit. We're going to put some chestnut friction polish on. Turn the extractor off for a moment. Now when you're using friction polish, let's say this one's the chestnut one. This is a shellac base to this. I don't bother with a sanding sealer, it does its own sealing. What we will do though is put it on without the lathe running, and I find that far more efficient, and it means that it doesn't fly all over the place. And it actually covers every part. Now we've got some stragglers in here, some little bits of worm. If I was worried about the worm, I would just, before I put a finish on, just pop it in the microwave for a few seconds, which kills immediately the worm inside. But as this is a demo, we're not going to go inside and microwave anything today. There we are. Colour just jumps out when we do this. I'll stop just for a minute so you can see what's happening. Now, if we were to start polishing that now with that same bit of tissue, this will disintegrate fairly quickly and start sticking to the piece. So you want a dry piece of tissue now. I'm waiting for it to start to go off a little bit. I don't want to turn the lathe on with it still dripping over the surface. But once it has, then we can start buffing. We get the colour, get that sheen jump, get that conauber wax which is in the polish start to activate, and you get a really lovely sheen. There we are, there, that's pretty. What a lovely timber. What a lovely timber. You get a real sort of chatoyance, a shimmer come through that. That's nice. So what we'll do, we're nearly done with this one. I just need to sand the top and bottom. Okay, so that lovely, lovely timber. It just gets that real shimmer. So we just need to take this off, and I just want to put a flat on the bottom. So what we'll do is add a chuck and a sanding disc. Now I've shown you before how to do these sanding discs. They're ever so simple. Just basically a piece of plywood and we need our chuck. So let's get some sea jaws going on that one. Again, remember last week we spoke about chucks and centers. And this is the sea jaws. The sea jaws are gonna be our connection between that and, in this case, faceplate ring. Okay. Maybe just come back a little bit now, Charlie. Just want to focus in on what's happening on the front here. So I've just expanded those sea jaws into that faceplate ring, which in turn is holding my sanding disc. And I'm just going to now, with the help of my extractor, back on again, sand that top and bottom. Lathe speed down. It's a big lump of MDF there, so I'm going to be sanding about 1,000 reps. Okay, so there we are, that's all we've done. Same to the bottom, just to flatten them off. We don't have to flatten them off, of course you could have it tilting. Just to give ourselves a nice base, nice stable flat there. Okay, let's pop that down. Now one other thing we need to do is that's given us, or taken away the waste, but it's quite a coarse grit on here. I think probably about an 80, if not, yeah, an 80 grit. So that's too much. I mean, that will show here. So we're just going to do a little bit of fine hand sanding. We'll start off with the 240 and then straight to the, then just straight up to a 400. You could, of course, put a finer disc on or put one of your little rotary sander discs on. That would work, but just nice and quick. This is 400 now. There we are. A little bit more of that polish. Just use the damp area from your tissue that you had before. There we are. And then your choice now is either to put the polishing mops on or a bit of elbow grease, whichever suits. And there we are. Our little finished toadstool. Craft show favourites, those are. Okay, so that's a toadstool. Let's go on to the next project, slightly bigger one. This one, a little vase. Again, this is the next in my beginner teaching classes. This is the next project after our toadstool. It's just taking it out a little bit bigger. It's learning to part off with the lathe running. All that sort of thing. Is a little bit of end grain hollowing, drilling on the lathe, all that sort of stuff. So there we are. So we're going to go back between centers again. Remember, this time we're going to use the Pro Drive. This is the 21mm Pro Drive, and we're going to rough down to cylinder. Again, we're going to loosely, roughly set up or center up. Lots of things going on with this bit of timber. And I'm going to have this as the top at the moment, and this is the bottom, and on the bottom I want to create a little foot that my sea jaws is going to grip, and then everything will be turned off of that chuck. So again, we know that this is a dusty timber, so I'm going to have the extraction on. Take a slurp of coffee. So we're rough down. Go with our hole gouge again. Around about 1600 revs will be fine. Slightly bigger project this one. You can use a roughing gouge if you wanted to. Okay, so I'm going to size the foot that I need. So remember, I'm going to use the C-jaws. I'm just sizing my C-jaws. And then again, we'll use a passing tool. Let's go for, I'm going to go for my 6mm beading and passing tool here. Just slipped over that, so we know we're at the right size. And then before we do anything else, I'm just going to tidy the very underside up, because that, at the moment it's just a rough saw cut. So there we are. So all of those surfaces now that could potentially touch the chuck are clean. So this one, the edge, and this face here. Now we can mount that on the chuck. So we're going to use the bolt gouge. I'm going to leave the bolt gouge there. That can come away. We can remove our Pro Drive. And then fit the chuck with the C-jaws on. I mean, I'm going to take away all the bark, remove the bark on this one. Okay, let's have a look, see where we are. A little bit of bark there, we'll get rid of that and then we're good to go. Okay, next thing, we're going to think about drilling using the tailstock sensor in a moment. So before I do that, I just need to clean up this surface. I'm going to go down to a smaller bolt gouge now, so we're going to go down to a 6mm, quarter-inch bolt gouge. Same grind on it, still 55 degrees on the grind. Now, Charlie, maybe let's come in from that angle now. Whilst you're just moving the camera, I'm going to get a drill bit as well. Cleaned away. Give myself a little bit more light. Speed's fine, nothing's touching the tool rest, and I'm just going to cut with the bowl gouge, aim the flute toward 2 o'clock, get the bevel rubbing. Now the bevel's rubbing, I can push up the length of the tool. Nothing to do with my forward hand, it's all coming from pressure up the tool. The bevel's sliding. And I go all the way to centre. Now one more thing, I just want to make sure that my drill bit picks up dead on centre and doesn't stop vibrating too badly. So we're going to use just a little skew, and I'm just going be about a 12mm drill bit, but it's not, unless you're fitting a glass liner or plastic liners to this, it's not overly important the size of the drill bit. Anything sort of between 10 and 15mm should do. This is, the one I'm making here is a dried flower vase. Just double check where I'm going to drill to. So I'm going to drill to the end of the machine area of that drill bit. Okay. Now if you go in one hit without taking away all the swarf, you're going to get a horrible lot of friction, screeching and horrible noise. So what I'm going to do is use some wax. So the same wax I'm going to finish this with, I'm going to use as a lubricant as well. Now, most waxes are going to work. 3 that I recommend that work nicely. My favourite is the chestnut, either the microcrystalline or the paste wax. I love the laburnum one as well. Hamster Sheen do a good range. The gloss one's quite nice. And of course the Axminster waxes. Take your pick out of those, trial them around. My favourite, like I say, I'm using at the moment is the chestnut. But to start with, let's just lubricate that drill bit. You want to be drilling it between 8 and 900 on a piece of drill bit this size. Take your time, always hold in the chuck. You can feel any slight movement in the chuck, so if you think that chuck's going to slip, and you certainly don't want to be bringing the thing back at speed and leaving the chuck in the workpiece, otherwise it'll tend to fly all over the place. There we go. When you start feeling good resistance, then bring it back, clear out the swarf. Not with your finger, do that with a pencil. Do that with your finger, you're going to either cut yourself or burn yourself. There we are, a bit more wax. Remember, I'm going to the bottom of that machined area. That screeching gets too much, it can be quite damaging to your ears, so make sure you're continually clearing away swarf and adding wax, adding a lubricant. There we are, so that's about what we need to do. That can come back. Take the last little bits of swarf out of that. Rid of our chuck. Another square of coffee. Now we can start thinking about hollowing out. So I tend to hollow out first, whilst we've still got strength in the piece. And I'm going to do a very, very simple convex curve. We'll then match that on the outside with a concave. The lathe speed can come up. I like to turn this at about 1400. And you need to have the tool rest at a height that you can actually cut on the centre line of your workpiece. So I'm going to start in the middle, bevel rubbing. Pushing up the length of the tool, slowly bringing that handle round. Into the hole. Make sure when you get to that hole that you're in control. That's where your forward hand takes over. So as you get close, make sure your forward hand is supporting. That's your brake, so you don't suddenly fall into the hole in the middle. So you can see we've got a nice little convex curve. Now we can move to the outside. Got some nice things going on here. We've got an old branch, a dead branch gone through. That's going to leave us a real streak in a moment. Now, so I'm going to have about 1/3 of the overall length is going to be neck. So that's going to be about there, maybe up here somewhere. So let's start shaping. So to start with, I'm just going to do a series of cuts towards the vase. This is going to just be my clearance cut. Just taking out some of that excess timber. You probably notice that every cut's getting a bit deeper now. There we are. Again, I'm going to stop. I'm just going to move the camera around a little bit. Just going to move the camera around so we can see this shape being formed. There we are. So my next job is I want to round over this shoulder. That gives me room then to start shaping this curve. So it's a bevel rub, slowly coming around. Nothing changes here with the type of cut. I'm still pushing at the length of the tool. My forward hand is my brake member. Lovely transition between the sap and the heart. So now we can start thinking about the inside here. So nice little concave cut. Alright, so here I'm controlling the bowl gouge. I've actually locked the handle into my hip and I'm moving the hip, so I'm sort of swaying over, just transferring the weight from one leg to the other. Now I can come back the other way. Just pinching for thickness, not going too thin. We've got about a 12mm hole at the middle, so we know actually how far we can go. And I reckon that's probably it. Two little cuts up, and I'm looking now at the silhouette. I want a nice curve there, no flats. That's nice and the right thickness, it's not too thin. I'm just going to put a little bit of definition in that shoulder joint there, and I'll do that with the parting tool. Just a side scrape and use the corner of the tool, give me that little bit of definition. Done. Right, before we start sanding, let's do our parting cut. So I'm going to do 2 cuts again. Lined up with that cut that I've just made so they can see down and just to see how much is left. So I've left in there probably about 30mm. I actually pulled up right down in there to see how much timber's left. Just tilt it just quickly. Yeah. Alright. So you can see how much, it's about 30mm, not too little. If you do, then you get a lot of vibration when you're finishing the shape. So just enough to give us some stability. Alright, I'm going to start off by roughing down with the bottom of the bowl gouge. Shape. Now that's roughing down using the bottom of the gouge. Now that doesn't leave a good finish because there's no bevel rubbing. You can see that the tears and things. So what we'll do now is turn the tool over, use the bevel. Center. I'm just going to raise the speed a little bit there. There we are. And then ready for me to sand, I'm just going to take that parting tool, cut in a little bit more. It's always important when you're sanding that you're sanding to something, because if I sand it down to a flat, then part it off, I'd throw up a little burr. So it's quite important. So there we are, we're ready to sand now. So I'll buzz through the sanding a moment, and then we'll get our finish on that. We're going to part this one off with the lathe running. Same abrasive. I'm going to start at 100, work my way down through 150, 240, 400. First grade is the main and important one. This is 100 grit, and I want to take away any nasty. So the burrs that are inside, that's the transition there between the turning tool and the drill bit. So we'll get rid of those. And that is equally as important. That area is as important as the rest of the vase, because whoever's using it will see that all the time. So I'm going to make sure everything, all those nasties have disappeared. We'll have a brief stop and a look just to make sure. finish off, I'll stop and have a look, make sure I haven't missed anything. That timber is beautiful, really pretty stuff. Okay, so let's get that extractor turned off so you can hear me a little bit better. So what we've got here, we're going to use a sanding sealer. Sanding sealer I'm using is a mixture of, I've got chestnut, again I do use a lot of chestnut actually, but chestnut sanding sealer, but it's diluted with chestnut cellulose thinners as well. So 50-50 mix I've got, so it's nice and dilute and thin. That means it will dry really quickly. Now I prefer that mix, not everybody does. The reason I prefer it is because it's so thin it will sink in a long way and really lock itself. And sometimes when you get it straight out the jar, it's just, for me, it's just a little bit gloopy. I don't have the freedom to work with it as much as I do when I thinned it. I've got a little bit of time. I'm not going to leave big gloopy brush marks. I'm going to wipe the surface now. I know it's soaked in, I'm happy with that. Wipe the surface, just to get rid of any residue, any brush marks. It's going to start drying. I know it's drying and evaporating because I can smell it quite strongly. Now you need to wait now, and I would give this a good, well, this would be a good time to go and have a cup of tea if you wanted to do that. I tend to wait about 30 seconds and then we're going to sand back, but not sanding back at high speed. We're going to drop the lathe speed down. I'm going to move to a 600 grit abrasive and I'm going to very delicately touch the surface when I'm sanding. All I want to do is remove the nap, that grain that's risen up now with that solution. So nice and slow. I'm running there about 250 revs and I'm barely touching the surface. If you press hard, then what'll happen is you'll get little burnish lines, you get little bright areas which you don't want. All you're doing is just denibbing, remember. This is a preparation, it's not a finish. It's preparation for your finish. There we are, now we're getting somewhere. Okay. So now a little bit of wax polish on top of that. A little bit of wax polish, so I'm going to use the same tissue. Forget the inside. And again, without the lathe running, I want to make sure that I'm getting full coverage. I'm not missing anywhere. So cover the whole of the vase. There we go. So now, what we'll do, rather than just go and buff that away, let's get some shavings. We'll take off the excess with shavings and go up to about 700 to 1,000 revs. Handful of shavings. Take away the excess wax. Again, if you follow the instructions, you might want to leave this for half an hour or so, 20 minutes even. So that's taking away all the excess. Now we can buff. Now we can actually get a polish going. Don't forget the inside. Look at that polish just jumped straight out. There we are. So we'll stop and have a look at that. See what we got. Isn't that pretty? Stunning bit of timber. Okay, so now we can part off. This is exciting bit. We want no drama here, to be quite honest with you. We want very little happening apart from the vase coming off in your hand. Now, can I get around there? Charlie, can you guide me here? Because I want to make sure that everyone can see what's happening. My hand's going to have to come around here, so tell me, might want to cut. Is that all right? Yeah. So we're going to do a couple of cuts with the parting tool. Around about 1200 revs is fast enough, which is where we are. And you're okay to start with, to cut until you get down to about 12 mil, about ½ inch. then you'll need the support. Now you would have noticed, if you've seen many of these demos, that I have sleeveless smocks. So I have nothing around my wrist here. I don't tend to wear a watch, but no jewellery around there, because I don't want anything catching the chuck as I'm parting off. In the winter, it's as important, big baggy jumpers, sweatshirts, all those sorts of things. Be careful what's dangling down, be aware of your surroundings, make sure you're not going to get yourselves in bother. And take your time here, be gentle. The more aggressive you are with this cut, the bigger the area you'll have left at the end to clean up. So nice and gentle, like you said, no drama. And supporting the vase. And all that's going to happen is going to stop in my fingers. So we're now down to about 3 mil of timber left. I'm going to cut now and it will just stop. Nice and gentle. There we are. And then that leaves just that tiny little nib on the bottom to just pare off. And you can use whatever you want with that. You can use a little parting gouge. For now, I'll just use my little carving knife. And then a little bit of wax on the bottom, a little bit of sand, a little bit of wax on the bottom. Okay, right then, so let's just have a look at what we've got there. My glasses off. A couple of nice little, like I say, weekend projects for you really. Both from the same timber, some nice laburnum. I'm not sure whether the tree was the same, they came from a different limb, but this one seems to be a little bit brighter here. That one was finished with friction polish, or Woodturner's lathe polish, and this one was finished with sanding sealer and paste wax. So a couple of little, nice little laburnum projects. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that, guys. Don't forget, come back same time next time, 4 o'clock, my workshop. Tuesdays and Thursdays is a regular thing, and we've been doing it for a fair while now. So until next time, hope you had a fantastic, or have a fantastic weekend. Get working on your vase shapes and your toadstools. So until next week, I've been Colwin Way. Thank you very much. See you next week. Bye bye.